here, so let's do this. Okay. Ready? Well, it's already going. That's fine. When you learn a martial art, the most important thing that you will ever learn is usually taught on the first day. But you will not notice. Perhaps after grading for your 3rd degree or 5th degree black belt, it occurs to you to look back and say, it's all about that. It is as if the teacher said, step 1, achieve enlightenment. Okay, since no one seems to be paying attention, we will work on what to do when you are losing, until you realize that you could have started by learning how to win. Now, as with all things worth learning, this might be confusing at first, so feel free to be confused. Like learning a new language. It seems like it's just noise in the beginning, but by sticking with it and paying attention, you will eventually find yourself understanding quite well. So, I will start today's lesson with the stuff that does not make sense, and if you stick with me, I believe that you will get something valuable out of this lesson. Perhaps the first thing that you learn when you're studying Tai Chi is a posture called preparation. This posture is also called Wuji. Wuji is a Chinese word that means no duality, or no polarity, or singularity. It can also mean promise. But Wuji is what you get when yin and yang combine. It's what happens when there is no differentiation between up and down, left and right, forward and back, yes and no, existing and not existing. There is no distinction between past, future, and the present, and it is sometimes translated as emptiness, or void, or infinite potential. Wuji is often distinguished from or compared to Tai Chi, or universal duality, or supreme polarity. Tai Chi describes the dualistic nature of the phenomenal universe, in which everything is defined by its relative opposite, whereas Wuji refers to the non-phenomenal, non-dualistic universe. There's an apparent paradox, because Tai Chi distinguishes itself from Wuji, but Wuji does not distinguish itself from Tai Chi. Tai Chi says, I am duality, and that is quite different from non-duality. But Wuji says there is no distinction between non-duality and non-non-duality. So, Tai Chi is born out of Wuji, so Wuji sees Tai Chi as part of itself, but Tai Chi has no experience of being Wuji, so it sees itself as being something completely different from Wuji. In martial arts, as with everything else, everything that we do is about relative opposites. There's me and them, fast and slow, strong and weak, stationary and moving, past and future, attack and defense. But as we improve our skills, awareness, and understanding, we start to get an understanding of the importance of non-duality and how it permeates everything that we do. Eventually, we start to see Wuji as the anchor of all high-level skill and the source of everything that we accomplish. Now, the posture called Wuji is the starting point for all of the forms, the exercise that we call Taiji, or Taiji Chuan. When you practice a routine, you start by standing comfortably with your feet parallel, approximately hip distance apart. The legs are straight but not hyperextended. The arms are hanging loosely at your sides. The tip of the tongue lightly touches the roof of the mouth. You relax the body by aligning it perfectly. This takes some practice and perhaps some physiotherapy, because adults tend to have spent years getting bent out of shape. The Tai Chi curriculum has a number of exercises that can be used to improve things like Sudoku neck or gamer's back. Now, perhaps you have access to a qualified medical professional who can help fix the problems that are caused by standing incorrectly or sitting incorrectly. But the traditional method is to practice standing and sitting correctly. Now, fair disclosure, I have made good use of physiotherapists, chiropractors, osteopaths, acupuncturists, registered massage therapists, doctors, and the occasional surgeon. I am certainly not saying that Tai Chi can replace those. However, all of the aforementioned professions are represented by my students, and they recommend me to their clients. So I'm just saying. Now, when you assume the Wuji posture, you refine your proprioception and open yourself up to what the body and mind are telling you. Is there physical tension that you can release right away? Is there tension that can be resolved by improving your posture or changing the subtle alignment of the joints? Are you able to breathe deeply and slowly and effortlessly, expanding the lower abdomen to accommodate the diaphragm as it contracts and makes room for the lungs? If not, can you adjust your posture to fix that? Some people teach the pelvic tilt, which contracts the abdominal muscles and works to realign the lower spine. But I prefer to engage the thighs more and relax the psoas muscles and allow the breath to expand the lower belly completely and evenly, but that's another lesson. With daily practice, you will find deeper and deeper levels of relaxation until the different parts of your body are balanced like a string of pearls balanced on end. You will feel relaxed and energized, and you will start to notice a change in your mind as well. Every thought you have, no matter how subtle or conscious, provokes some kind of emotional response. Every emotion that you experience, no matter how subtle, affects the body, the posture, tension, and so on. Things like fear, anger, pensiveness, joy, compassion, etc. These all have a noticeable effect on your posture and your biochemistry. The practice of Wuji will help you to become aware of these changes and may help you to improve your mental and emotional balance while improving your physical balance. As you improve, Wuji will become about clearing the mind, quieting the emotions, relaxing the body. These skills are of primary importance for everyone, not just martial artists. So the physical, mental, and emotional noise are terrible distractions that we can become far too accustomed to. The modern lifestyle makes us particularly prone to distraction. If we can't go to the toilet without our smartphone because we would be too bored, how qualified are we to deal with the complex struggles of life? Wuji is a standing meditation that requires you to pay attention to yourself and how you relate to the world. In the beginning, many students find the exercise to be boring because the normal mental noise of their daily lives is so loud and chaotic that they need an external focal point, in the same way that a person with vertigo needs something to lean on or a stationary object to focus on. If you cannot conquer your own boredom, what can you conquer? I suggest that if you want to accomplish a long-term goal, you should practice a skill until you are bored, and then keep practicing it until you are not bored anymore. We don't practice standing meditation in the beginning in order to do something boring. We don't practice in the beginning because it is interesting. We practice standing meditation in order to learn how to find it interesting. When you stand in the Wuji posture, you observe your tension, your thoughts, and your emotions. You let go of each as you find it. When you find the tension, you let it go. When you notice a thought, you let it go. When you notice an emotion, you let it go. That is difficult for beginners, but you get the hang of it. Eventually, you may notice the connection between the physical tension, the emotion, and the thought patterns. Ideally, you are not thinking about anything. Ideally, the mind is clear. The body is perfectly balanced. You are so balanced that there is no balancing going on. There is no sense of up or down, or left or right, or forward or backward. There is no sense of existing or not existing. There is no past or future and no present. Everything is still and combined. There is no conflict. Okay, now you're ready to fight. Good. Ian Sinclair's first rule of martial arts. Try not to beat yourself up. Don't fight yourself. If you do find yourself fighting with someone else, you want to make sure that you are not bringing a fight with you. Things happen, of course, but that is when we get into the next skill level. Once you have achieved some degree of stillness, then it is time to take that stillness on the road. We can start exploring the differences between not happening and happening, between perfect stillness and perfect action. You don't want to bring your own personal fight to a different fight. If you are fighting someone else at the same time that you are fighting yourself, you will be outnumbered, and not just 2 against 1. When we fight ourselves, it's not just 1 against 1. There are typically multiple aspects of ourselves at war with each other all the time. Our thoughts and our emotions are constantly in conflict with each other. Now, sometimes they are friendly disagreements. Sometimes they are heated arguments. And sometimes they are holy wars. Resolving those conflicts can be a full-time job, but most people take far too many vacations from that job. If we don't take time to resolve those conflicts on a daily basis, then we will find things getting out of control before we are aware of it. And a civil war makes for poor national security. Such tension makes it more difficult to recognize and deal with the external challenges as they come up. So, stillness is really the ultimate martial skill. When someone attacks you, they are attempting to disrupt your balance and your stillness. They are trying to make it difficult for you to keep your center of gravity over your base of support. They want to make you fall down by tripping you, knocking you unconscious, throwing you, insulting you, scaring you, distracting you, etc. So all of those martial techniques that you learn, all those punches, those kicks, those throws, the joint locks, they're just ways of getting a person off balance. But balance itself is a powerful weapon here. It is not only the victim, it is the warrior. Balance is not only what you defend, it is what you defend with. So, when you master this perfect balance, okay, master, by the way, is a verb in this case. It's a continuous process. So, when you master balance, okay, balance is also a verb. Okay, so when you are continually mastering balancing, then you will find that it is much more difficult for other people or external situations in your life to disrupt your balance. Because you are constantly and habitually seeking and moving toward that calm state, that balanced state. Now, later when we talk about Pang, or Pangjing, the fundamental power in Tai Chi, we will see that it is essentially based on the perfection of this posture, this Wuji. Pang, or Pangjing, for now let's call it the power of Boing. It's founded on this central alignment of the body and the mind. So when people say, what's Pang when it's at home? Well, when it's at home, it's central alignment. When it goes out on the road, it's a whole bunch of other things. When everything is in perfect balance, and there is no unnecessary tension or cantilevering, and there is no internal conflict of the body, then it is as if gravity flows through you like a fast-flowing river. It's not a meandering river. It's not slow. It's more like a waterfall. It becomes this powerful, energetic current that aligns perfectly with the center of the earth. All of the different parts of the body are aligned like a string of pearls balanced on end, and it becomes a very fine line. So when you engage an opponent, when you start doing Tai Chi, then any contact that they make with you will get caught up in that river and get redirected into the ground. Imagine you are standing on the edge of a river and you push a canoe across the river. If the river is moving slowly enough and there is no wind, then the canoe will continue to drift across the river until it reaches the other side. But if that river is flowing very quickly, then the canoe will quickly get pulled downstream. It might never reach the other side. If the river is very fast, then when you push the canoe, it can just get pushed back up onto the shore with you, essentially bouncing off of the river. So imagine that gravity flows through you like this. If someone tries to push you over and the current of gravity is flowing directly into the ground through those muscle trains and the fascia and the well-aligned joints and the perfectly balanced bones, when someone pushes you, if they are right on your center and targeting perfectly, then they will get caught up in that current and they will bounce off of you, like bouncing off the earth. It's not quite like pushing a wall, but Newton's third law certainly applies. Another quality of this central alignment cultivated by practicing Wuji is that it is infinitely thin. The goal is to perfect the alignment so that it is like a tiny thread. It is just a line. It has only 2 dimensions. It is like a tiny thread with all of the power of gravity flowing through it. By making the current very thin, it makes it very difficult for your opponent to target it. The opponent may see the target, but the actual center is imperceptible to them. If they bounce off of that central alignment, then we call that pang, or boing. If they are not exactly on your center, then they will roll off, or simply miss. That is a quality we call lü. Now, some people call it roll or roll back or something like that. We say that pang is like water supporting a boat, and liu is like the way that water allows the boat to drift and roll. Pang is like how a log floats in the water. Liu is the tendency of the log to roll over when somebody stands on it. The water isn't doing anything, it's just being water. Likewise, central alignment is not doing anything. It is just a quality that you acquire and improve upon. So, the log floats in the water. That's pang. A person balances on the log. That is still pang. The person loses their balance and falls off the log. That's lü. If the person is perfectly balanced, the log will continue to support them. If the person jumps up and down and stays balanced, then the water will bounce them. They will bounce off the water. If they are not perfectly aligned, they will roll off. So that is the nature of pang and liu. They are 2 sides of the same coin. You cannot really have one without the other. A central alignment embodies them both. Now, when you take them on the road, as I said, you must maintain stillness and emptiness within your actions. Otherwise, it will be you falling off of the log. Now, pang and liu are 2 very obscure words. Pang is really a Tai Chi word. It's not a Chinese word. Variations of it are in Chinese dictionary, and you might be able to type it on your computer. But liu is not in any Chinese dictionary, and there is no font that I know of, unless you create one yourself, that will allow you to type it for things like my website. You might say that it is not really a Chinese word so much as a Tai Chi word. But it is fundamental not only to Tai Chi, but to martial arts in general. Other martial arts may have different ways of speaking about it, and you may find corollaries in other martial arts. But this is the fundamental principle that comes with standing and being empty. There is another vital consideration when it comes to the importance of Wuji practice. And this has to do with your reaction time and your ability to engage a situation appropriately and honestly. Let's do a little thought experiment. And if you stand like this and you close your eyes, can you picture yourself being in the most calm, safe, relaxed, and peaceful place that you could possibly imagine. Maybe you are at a cottage or a campsite or a secluded private tropical beach or a nice comfy home or a spa. Make it someplace extremely safe, very comfortable, very relaxed. It is the ultimate vacation spot. Just imagine yourself being in that perfect, calm, relaxed situation. You are standing there with your eyes closed and just enjoying the peacefulness of the situation. Now, imagine that you open your eyes and you suddenly find yourself in an octagonal cage in a stadium being attacked by a mixed martial artist. They are punching, no, kicking, no, throwing. No, it's a dog biting you. No, it's an octopus. No, it's an alien. No, it's a hawk. No, it's an alien octopus hawk. Okay, it's gone now. You close your eyes again, and you're back in that most safe, calm, relaxed, and peaceful place that you can imagine. How did you feel before the attack? How did you respond to the attack? And how do you feel now? Now, close your eyes and imagine that you are in that perfectly safe situation. You will remain there as long as your eyes are closed. But know that as soon as you open your eyes, the environment will change and somebody or something is going to attack you. As soon as they see your eyes open. How do you feel now? Your eyes are closed. You're still in that perfectly relaxed situation. Are you still perfectly relaxed? Are you still on vacation, or are you thinking about what will happen when you open your eyes and what is going to be there? What could it possibly be? Are you trying to imagine every possible danger that you might face when you open your eyes? If this were not just a thought experiment, do you think that you would flinch or tense up first before you opened your eyes? Would you raise your hands in defense? Would you try to sort of open your eyes a little bit and peek? That is what most people do. I've done experiments like this in real life with real people attacking at random, and it can be quite entertaining to watch. Okay, now, with your eyes closed, in that perfectly safe scenario, know that when you open your eyes, someone might attack you, or they might not attack you. Perhaps they will punch you, perhaps they will give you money, perhaps they will be a trusted friend trying to give you a hug. All things are possible. Now, this is the problem that faces us in combat and in our daily lives. We can train for particular scenarios. We can learn techniques and methods. We can condition ourselves to be better at withstanding injury and overpowering opponents. But the unpredictable will confound us if we are depending on our ability to predict the future. It will actually slow us down. The ability to identify and respond to actual threats appropriately requires that we not misidentify threats where there are none. The ability to recognize patterns is a valuable skill and a very beneficial product of our evolution, but it can get us into trouble in a fight and can make us see, it can make us see faces on Mars where there are none, or make us think that a picture of a bird is actually a picture of a goat. It makes us confuse what was with what is, or what could be with what will be. Do you know how many times an action has to be repeated before your mind identifies it as a pattern? For instance, how many times does an opponent have to repeat a jab in order to make your mind identify it as a pattern? The answer is 0. As soon as the opponent throws a jab, your mind says, oh, watch out for those jabs. Now, with experience, you will learn that there are other punches and other patterns, and that you should also be careful of those. But with even more training, you learn to be more discerning about what is a genuine pattern and what is not. Much of martial arts training is actually about developing habits. This is based on the recognition of the fact that we don't have as much control over our decisions as we think we do. And much of what we think of as free will and creative thinking is actually an illusion. Nearly half of our actions are habitual. To a martial artist, this means that we condition ourselves to respond automatically in certain situations. It saves time, especially when we are under stress, to not have to think about what we are going to do, especially when we cannot think clearly. But it also means that our opponents will also have habits, and we can potentially identify those habits and take advantage of our opponent's predictability. Of course, they can do the same to us, especially if we have clear tells, or if we have habits that are typical of most people. I have certain techniques and certain combinations that will work against 90% of my opponents. 95 maybe. But that 5% can kill you. People in general do about half of what we do without thinking about it. But that doesn't mean that the other half of what we do is the result of our thinking and free will. Even when we do think about what we are doing, the decision is often made before we think about it. Yeah, think about that. We believe that we make decisions about ethics and politics and business and investments and personal relationships and who we're going to vote for and even scientific interpretations of data. We think we are basing our decisions on a willful use of our conscious intellect. But there are unconscious habits at work that shape our decisions and lead to bias and prejudice and often self-defeating behavior. A skilled observer can sometimes see this in another person and predict their decisions before they make them. In self-defense, it is sometimes called reading the primary intent or seeing the shape of the mind. You can learn to see what an opponent is going to do even before they are conscious of the decision to do it. Now, often it is more difficult to see those patterns in yourself, so martial arts training comes in handy as a kind of really good biofeedback system. Training with a partner can help to expose your own patterns. With a particular kind of partner training, especially things like Toisho, you can learn to sense the part of the opponent's mind that wants to be pushed off balance. And then you just let them. But if they are observing your mind, then they will see what you are looking at and adapt. Then it becomes a game of me sensing you sensing me, me seeing you hearing me, and so on. In Tai Chi, we call this listening, or tingjing. It's difficult to hear what your neighbor is saying, however, if you are making too much noise yourself. You need to stop yelling and turn off your stereo system before you can eavesdrop on your neighbors. This is why I say if you want to learn to read another person's mind, you need to practice reading your own. Imagine that you are in a dark cavern. The only source of light is the miner's headlamp that you have mounted on the front of your head. If you look for your shadow, you won't be able to see it because everywhere that you look, the light is shining on that space. The light is your conscious interpretation of the environment and your place in it. The shadow is your unconscious habits, to which you are normally oblivious. You know there is a shadow. You are vaguely aware of it out of the corner of your eye. But the shadow seems insignificant because all you see is the light. You are unaware of what you are unaware of. And on those rare occasions when you do think about your shadow, you turn to look for it and you are reassured by the light that shines in that space. But the shadow is like a monster hiding behind your back. It's always controlling everything that you do, to varying degrees, to a very large number of varying degrees. But through training techniques and conditioning and martial arts exercises and all the other sorts of practice that we do, you can train that monster to do the things that work under certain circumstances. So you train the monster, you train the shadow to respond. When something happens, the shadow responds for you. That way you don't have to think about it. You don't need your free will. You pass it over to the creature behind you that you don't know about. So through training and techniques and conditioning, you end up creating this super-powered monster that does all the work for you. But when you face a unique situation, the monster will fall into old habits, and you won't be able to adapt because you have forgotten that the monster is even there. Jekyll meet Hyde. Now, with another person in the cave who also has one of those miner's headlamps on their head, you can look for their shadow, but you can't see it very well because your own light is illuminating all the places where you look. You think, oh, their shadow will be behind them, and you look and, oh, there's no shadow. I don't see any shadow. You can only guess where their shadow would be based on where they are looking. And in a fight, you can use that to inform your tactics, but it is still not perfect. Your own mind is still confusing your interpretation of what their mind is doing. But if you turn your light off, suddenly you can see their shadow very clearly. Now this gives you the ability to recognize what their monster is doing, and to respond to it even before they know what's happening. Of course, this means a comprehensive integration of the senses, and I don't just mean the 5 senses that we normally think about. There are dozens of senses, and what we call extrasensory perception is probably just a combination of those other senses interpreted by a clear mind. But our minds have evolved to be habitual, and that works for us most of the time. Otherwise, we wouldn't act habitually most of the time. But clearing our mind enough to identify our habits is essential because it allows for us to form new habits and to adjust our programming to be able to adapt to a changing world. If we are going to survive as a species, we need to be able to do this frequently and rapidly, because if we don't adapt, the world that we build will not be the world we are built for. Have you ever experienced a web page failing to refresh or load properly? When you and your computer visit a website, your computer stores things like historical information, cookies, files, and forms. When you clear your browser cache, it prevents you from using old forms, and it helps your computer to work better. It also protects your private information. Wuji is like clearing your browser cache and your internet history. It prevents you from reacting to old, outdated information, and also helps to make you less predictable to your opponent. The practice of Wuji allows us to clear our browser cache so that we can load the appropriate information and apply whatever settings are appropriate for the moment. So the goal is to be able to be in that calm state and not respond to imaginary dangers, and to only respond to real threats when they exist, or before they happen, but only if they are going to happen, but not respond to them before they happen if they're not going to happen. You only respond to them before they happen if they are going to happen. There's a saying, if my opponent does not move, I do not move. If my opponent moves, I move first. Makes perfect sense. When you get good at this, then when you open your eyes and somebody attacks you, you will respond quickly and spontaneously to whatever is happening. This is especially effective if you've done some basic training and you have some useful options for what to do under such circumstances. That is to say, if you have some basic concept of self-defense, you have some useful habits that you can choose from. But if you are in that perfectly safe situation and thinking about the fact that when you open your eyes somebody is going to attack you, well, you are not on that beach anymore. You are not in that safe situation. Your mind is not calm. You are not seeing where you are. Your mind is too busy looking for all of the possible things that could go wrong when you open your eyes. You end up fighting against yourself so that when you open your eyes, you try to open them without opening them. You try to squint through your eyelashes and you put your hands up to guard yourself against things even when you don't know if anything is happening. You end up defending against things that are not attacking. There is a kind of training that we do where we try to go from non-duality to duality, to identify the line between perfect stillness and perfect action, without any kind of anticipation or bleed-through from one state to the other. This has multiple effects. One is that when you need to be in a state of calm, you can actually be calm. Another effect is that when you need to act, you will be able to act appropriately and not according to some kind of imaginary threat that you have conceived of beforehand. One of my students spoke of leading a fire team behind enemy lines and getting stuck in the tall grass when an enemy platoon that they were watching was joined by an armored regiment. He and his team lay still in the tall grass all day and into the night before they were able to sneak past the sentries and start the rather rushed 6-hour hike to make a delayed rendezvous with their troop. The other 3 members of the fire team were really exhausted when they got back, and he chastised them for not taking the opportunity to sleep when they were lying in that tall grass. Rest is a weapon, so it was important for him to sleep, even in the midst of his enemies. He knew that if they were discovered, he would not be able to escape, and if they were not discovered, he would need his rest. Wuji practice also helps you to bring your calm and your balance to the battle. So you will be less confused by the action and the potential of the situation. It makes the violent situation less violent. If you don't do this training, then not only will you fail to act appropriately in a violent situation, you will also end up bringing the violence to your calm situation. Your peace and your meditation will be disrupted constantly by that thought of what might happen when you are not meditating. So if you want this ability to go from calm, still, and empty to genuine, appropriate action, and then be able to immediately recover the calm, this is an extremely important skill in martial arts, and it is neglected far too often. Now, learning martial techniques and martial method and learning strategy and tactics and developing conditioning and doing scenario training and training the mind, all of these work together to improve this skill. Wuji can be applied to all of them, and they can all be applied to Wuji. So if you have some techniques that you can use, then when you open your eyes, you will have something that you can do. You are not just standing there and observing your imminent doom. And if you have a methodology for applying those techniques, all the better. And if you have the proper conditioning, then your body will be properly aligned and you will have the gravity flowing through you so that you can have the balance to fight and a balance to defend. Wuji is like cultivating the way of life that you want to defend and not just spending all of your resources on building a military to defend your way of life against something that is probably not a threat anyway. Balance is a weapon. The thing you are defending is what you are defending with. Now, ideally, you should practice at the same time every day. This is a crucial element whenever you're doing a practice like this. When you are doing a calm meditative exercise or any kind of training that requires the mind to be calm and still, especially in the beginning, it's very useful to do it at the same time every day. This way you program your mind, you develop the habit to allow for that time. It allows your mind to say, yeah, I don't have to think about the laundry or about the shopping or about the taxes. I don't have to think about the fact that my boss is going to fire me for practicing kung fu in the lobby or any of other problems, because the problems exist in another space-time. You have this time to yourself, and it is allotted specifically for this. Your mind will then allow you to find that stillness and that calm in that peace. It'll become a habit. The goal of Wuji is to be still and empty, and to not have to think about anything. But we have little rules that you can think about if you need to think about something. One of these rules helps to balance the head and keep it properly aligned, and to avoid Sudoku neck or gamer's back. We also have stretches and exercises and movements that we can do to fix the musculature and the spinal alignment. Imagine a string attached to the top of your head and lifting you up. I used to go around to my students, and back when I had students, and I would just lightly grab the hair at the top of their head between their ears, and I would lift up the hair and ask them to drop their chin and see if they could get their head back into position. I don't do that so much anymore because I discovered that, well, many of my students don't have hair, and also the occasional student would have a very convincing toupee. And then when you lift the hair up and the toupee comes off, it's a very interesting moment for everyone in the class. Other rules involve sinking the shoulders downward and the elbows outwards, and relaxing and loosening the intercostal muscles, and adjusting the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine, and breathing with the belly, and making sure that the waist is loose, and leveling the pelvis without tensing the stomach, and relaxing the psoas muscles, and on and on. And then after about an hour of detailed instruction, getting you to think about all of these different things, the teacher will say, "Great, remember all of that and clear your mind." The fact is that many corrections eventually lead you to one realization, and then the many exercises are one exercise, and then they are nothing. And that is really something. Now, once you can master that art of not fighting yourself, then you will be ready for Ian Sinclair's second rule of martial arts: don't fight other people. Not fighting other people is an important combat principle. Martial arts and practical self-defense are based on the recognition that violence is what happens when you don't do martial arts. Martial arts are intended to be the cure for violence. Anyone can be violent, although some people are more susceptible to it, just as anyone can get an illness, although some people are more susceptible to illness. But we'll deal with that in another video. Very good. More practice.
Congratulations on making it to the end of one of my videos. That is quite an accomplishment. If you would like to see more of these videos, then please visit sinclairinternal.arts.com, where you can make a one-time donation, or subscribe or sign up for a private online lesson. If you would like to see fewer of these videos, that is going to cost you.